It's Christmas Eve, and we're going to go game by game, matchup by matchup for the Christmas Day games. We got 3 games to look at, and we've been spreading them out for each slate. The Saturday slate, the Sunday slate, and now the Christmas Day slate. So we have these spread out if you want to use these for matchups for DFS. Also, it allows you to zoom into these matchups, and we're going to go deeper on these 3 games, and we're going to identify the must start, the sneaky starts. We're going to be talking about pretty much every player in general. We're going to see how these games are potentially going to flow, and then we're going to identify which players we're going to want to start in our fantasy lineup. So what you need to do right now is click that subscribe button. The season's almost over, but you're going to need me as a key resource for your drafts next year, because we pump out the content. We're going to have a lot of advanced metrics on these players. We're going to be going over player values, how they should be drafted, how you can strategize. We cover the NFL draft. We cover training camp and mini camp pretty extensively. You do not want to miss out on all that content, so you can learn about these rookies, learn about your drafts, learn about these players. Click that button. Stop missing out. Let's take a look at these games here for Christmas here. Raiders at the Chiefs. And we're going to start it off hot here. We got a 41 over-under. Think about this. A Raiders-Chiefs game on Christmas Day with a 41 over-under. We got a spread of 10 here, so it's pretty thick. And I guess we're going to figure this one out pretty easily. We know the Chiefs are going to run it up here. We know the Raiders are going to be respectable when it comes to fantasy points, but not in the real NFL game. That being said, we got a lot to look at. We're going to start things off by looking at the Chiefs' defense here. Against running backs, they're averaging 19.8 PPR points per game, ranking 20th in the NFL. 20-point performances they've allowed. They've allowed one to Josh Jacobs. They've allowed one to James Cook. Something to pay attention to, considering Josh Jacobs has rung up fantasy points on the Chiefs this year. Against the wide receivers, 29.9 PPR points per game, 26th in the NFL. They're a little bit more locked down against the pass. And then 28.5 points per game in their last 3 weeks. Their last 3 performances. 11.7% below average in scoring. So they're starting to tighten things down a little bit. They've also been in some lower game scripts here. Something to take note of going forward in this matchup, considering we're going up against a rookie quarterback. But Josh Jacobs, everybody's going to start him. It doesn't even matter. He did well against the Chiefs earlier this season. He's practicing. Looks like he's going to be back. Keep an eye on him, though. You might be firing up Zamir White. Considering recording these videos a little bit earlier, you might catch some of these players out that we're talking about who's on the mend right now. But Josh Jacobs looks like he's trending to be in on Monday to play on Christmas Day, and he's played well against the Chiefs this year. We know he's going to be getting a lot of touches. We know he's going to be getting a lot of opportunities. Look for him to get a lot of workload. Keep an eye on Zamir White just in case. If you have him on your roster, just have him sit there. Just see what happens. It's okay to let a player collect some dust if things don't run your way. And of course, Davante Adams. Of course, we're looking at him, because he gets the targets and they're starting to ramp back up. 10 targets in week 14, 12 in week 15 with Aiden O'Connell at quarterback. Jacoby Myers has been seeing targets. Davante Adams, though, solid as always, a player to look at. But now we're looking at the Raiders defense here versus running backs. They're allowing 23.8 points per game, 9th in the NFL. 9th in PPR. That's going to be solid for Isiah Pacheco, who's supposed to suit up this week, who's supposed to be back. And 20-point performances, we see Isiah Pacheco there, we see Deontay Foreman, and we saw Gibbs there. Jahmyr Gibbs blew up against them as well. That being said, since Pacheco did it once, more than likely he's going to do it twice. So he's a good bet this week. He's a good bet to get some touches. Maybe there's a ramp-up period. Maybe you want to be skeptical on that. However, it really depends on how you're looking at the running back position. You may have to start them nonetheless. Versus wide receivers, 31.9 PPR points per game, 20th in the NFL. They're allowing 31.4 points per game in their last 3 games, 2.6% below average. So really, they're allowing some fantasy points to wide receivers, but they're a little bit of a run funnel. We might see the Chiefs run it a good bit against the Raiders in this matchup. That being said, Isiah Pacheco looks like he's going to be back. He was running hot before the injury. As long as they do not derail the touches and slow him down and give him a pitch count, we should see him eat in this matchup because he's done it before. We saw him eat in Week 12 with 25.9 PPR fantasy points. That could happen again, and he's been hot over these last few weeks, getting a lot of workload, and he's been pretty stable throughout the season. The only question is whether or not they give him a ramp-up period, but you got to analyze your roster. You got to analyze your lineup to see what you want to do with it. But I feel good with Isiah Pacheco. I think if he's on the field, he's seeing a 70 to 75% snap share. He's going to be getting enough touches to be productive. They're going to have him out there. They're going to have him cement things. Also, from what we saw from the running backs these last few weeks, they're probably excited to have him back. Rashee Rice has been hot. He has been red hot. Look at his scoring over these last few weeks. Week 12 against the Raiders, 24.7 PPR fantasy points. Why can't we do that again? Week 13 against Green Bay, 14. Week 14 against a Bills defense, 18.2. Week 15 against the Patriots, a not optimal matchup, 24.1. Why can't we do this again? Why can't we keep these targets ramped up? And since that Raiders game in Week 12, look at the targets here. 10 targets, 9 targets, 11 targets, 9 targets. He's getting volume. If we continue to get that volume, he's going to continue to be productive. And Mahomes is looking his way. The A-dot's pretty short, but the volume's there. If you're getting 9 to 11 targets per game, you're going to be productive. You may have some downswings, but you're going to be productive on the most, right? Because you're going to be one of the top wide receivers in targets. That's what that trend is saying. He's one of the top targeted wide receivers in the NFL right now. That being said, he should be up there in production, which he is, and you're not benching him against a team that he already went off against. This is an optimal matchup. They got a running back coming back from injury that they're planning on using. Rashee Rice is on the upswing right now, and we're excited about that. Now we're looking at the Giants at the Eagles, 43 over-under. This one might not be great to watch on TV, but it might be great for fantasy football because you can pass on the Eagles. You can throw it on them. But the Giants are the Giants. The Eagles should be moving the ball as well. We should be getting some fantasy production in this matchup, to say the least. Watching it on TV might be a little bit different, but looking at the Giants' defense here versus running backs, 23.3 points per game, 12th in the NFL. 20-point performances allowed the running backs, Tony Pollard, Christian McCaffrey, Devin Hitchen, Breece Hall, Josh Jacobs, Brian Robinson, Ramondre Stevenson. That sounds good for DeAndre Swift. He should be getting some opportunities. Maybe they scale him back. Maybe not. But he should be getting opportunities. He should be doing well in this matchup. This is a great matchup for him. Versus wide receivers, 38.6 points per game, 5th in the NFL. 5th worst. When I say 5th or 1st or whatever, it's worst. It's the most points allowed to wide receivers. So this is very promising for us if we're starting wide receivers against them. They're allowing 34.7 points per game in their last 3 weeks, 7.5% above average. So they're still trending hot for the wide receivers playing against them. That's a good thing to note because A.J. Brown's probably going to go off in this matchup. Devontae Smith's not noted here because he's dealing with an injury. If you want to roll Quez Watkins, go ahead. If you want to do another ancillary wide receiver, go ahead. But we're here just doing the basics. A.J. Brown is going to go off in this game. He should. He should be getting a lot of targets. They should be going to him a lot because he's A.J. Brown, and that's what they're going to do with him. Even when he's down, he's productive. Look at the trend line here. Since Week 12, 14.7. Week 13, 19.4. Week 14, 18.4. Week 15, 10.6. Even when he's down, he's good enough to get the job done. Nobody's benching him. Nobody's going to do that. So let's move forward here to DeAndre Swift. Very optimal matchup here. He should go off in this game. He really should. And this should be a great matchup for him. Even when he's down, he's still scoring enough to get you by. There's only been 2 duds. Truly. 2 super duds. Week 15 wasn't great. But 10.6 is good enough to get you by. It's not going to kill your matchup. If it's a tight matchup, you kind of wish he scored 11 or 12. But it's good enough to get you by. DeAndre Swift's going to be safe in this matchup here. Considering Devonta Smith's out, considering the Eagles should be up in this game, they should be using DeAndre Swift late in this matchup. Now we're going over to the Eagles defense here versus running back. 17.9 PPR points per game, 28th in the NFL, allowing points to running backs here for fantasy. For 20-point performances, Breece Hall, Christian McCaffrey, Kenneth Walker. That being said, they will allow chunk performances, but they're a pass funnel team. Against wide receivers, 46.2 points per game. First, worst in the NFL, allowing fantasy points to wide receivers. 46.6 PPR points per game in the last 3 weeks. So they're still leaking fantasy points to wide receivers. They're above average by 44.5% over those last 3 weeks. They're still leaking fantasy points. That means Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson. Those are targets that if you're hurting a wide receiver and they're sitting on waivers, you may want to look at this week. You might get lucky with Tommy Toughnuts. But Saquon Barkley is in a weird matchup because he can be used in the passing game. He's going to be getting targets. Tommy Toughnuts does not like to target the running backs. Look at his targets here. 5, 3, 4, 2. It might be low, but it might be on the high end as well, considering how this defense is ran. That being said, you want to look at Darius Slayton. You want to look at Wan'Dale Robinson. You want to look at those players as ancillary jabroni wide receivers that could surprise you. Maybe even Jalen Hyatt. Maybe. If your back's against the wall or if you're playing DFS, maybe even him. But this is a matchup where if you want to get cute and you want to get cute with a wide receiver, you got some pretty guys here with the Giants considering the matchup. But we got the Ravens at the 49ers. 47 over under. We're expecting this one to be fun. We're expecting some scoring, but we could see the defenses step up. We could see the offenses step up because we got weapons on both sides of the ball. We got stout defenses on both sides of the ball. We just got to see how this game script goes. It could go either way. I can guarantee you that. If you want to go the under, you may want to. If you want to go to over because you think it will go yellow, you may want to, but we're not talking about that. The implied point total says Vegas expects fantasy points to be scored in this matchup. I bet there will be some good fantasy production. Ravens defense, 17.6 points per game to running backs, 29th in the NFL. Pretty locked down the running backs, but they've allowed 3 20-plus point performances. Zach Moss, Gibbs, and Mixon. Running backs can score in chunks against them. 3 performances is about average for a defense. So considering they're 29th in the league, you can score in chunks against this team. Versus wide receivers, 31.8 points per game, 21st in the NFL, 46.6 points per game in their last 3 weeks. We're starting to leak a little bit. We're starting to show some fantasy production. We're starting to show that we're human here. 44.4% above average compared to other NFL teams in the last 3 weeks. That is the Ravens right now. They're leaking a little bit. Some of that's due to matchup and game script, but still expect this game script to be weird. Because we got Deebo, we got Aiyuk. Expect it to be weird. That being said, Christian McCaffrey is a must start. Always got to talk about him. He has been the meme of the season because we're trying to get those people to comment saying, yeah, he's always a must start. We're trying to bait them in there. But Christian McCaffrey, it does not matter. The matchups don't matter. The grids are saying that. The charts are saying that. Christian McCaffrey, of course, we're going YOLO here. Brandon Aiyuk. We've had a downturn, but still productive. That being said, I feel pretty safe with him. I feel like they're going to get him looped in on some short targets here. They're going to dink and dunk with him. He's okay. Look at the production here. Even if he's scoring wide receiver 3 levels, it's high end. It's good enough to get you by. Deebo Samuel's hot. Deebo Samuel's hot. This is why we think fantasy production is going to run rampant. And the scoring that Vegas is saying is going to be a little high because Deebo Samuel's hot. Brandon Aiyuk is going to take over if Deebo's not hot. That being said, we're expecting fantasy scoring in this matchup. Deebo Samuel, you're starting him. Now we're looking at the 49ers defense versus running backs. 19.6 points per game. 21st in the NFL. For 20-point performances, Kyren Williams, Joe Mixon. Just 2. They are bend and not break, but you can get some chunk plays on it. Kind of got to use that running back in the passing game. Versus wide receivers, 34.8 PPR points per game, 14th in the NFL, because they're a little bit more of a pass funnel. That being said, it's a little tougher to do. 30.4 points per game in the last 3 weeks, 5.7% below average, so they've been a little bit locked down as of late. On the season, earlier, middle of the season, you could throw on them a little bit. That was a little bit more matchup dependent. That was a little bit more game script dependent. This is a weird defense because they are tough, but they will leak fantasy production because they bend and not break on you. That being said, we got to look at this matchup here, and we got Zay Flowers. Look for him to get short targets. He's volatile. He is up and down. Look at the scoring here. Look at it. It's up and down throughout the whole season, recently too. What are you going to play with here? What are you going to do? You going to take that gamble? It really depends on where you're at. I guarantee there's a million lineup decisions with Zay Flowers this week, and this matchup might be the tiebreaker to go the other way. Odell Beckham. The numbers are saying, hey, this guy's been hot. This guy's been doing some things because he's been getting air yards. He's been getting targets downfield. Still volatile. Nature of this offense, they'll slow it down. They will, and they've also been in some weird game scripts. That Chargers game was weird. That Jacksonville game was weird. This team will do weird things. That's just about it. Odell Beckham himself has been hot because he's been getting deep targets, pushing to 20% target share. He's a gamble. He's a risk, but that high volatility option that could go off if this game script goes hot, and he may get some hot targets. Gus Edwards, you got to hope he crosses the goal line. There's no guarantees with him. If you ask me about Gus Edwards, he's a spray and pray candidate for your lineup. You close your eyes, you pray to the gods. And that's it. And you're probably going to have that decision with another similar running back. And guess what? You're just going to put one in there. Guess what? That's what's going to happen. The odds are lower against the Niners, but that doesn't mean it can't happen because he gets those goal line looks. Gus Edwards is a good running back. He's just got to be put in the right opportunities to score fantasy points. This is a tougher matchup for him. This is a tougher matchup for the wide receivers. Honestly, it's a tougher matchup for everybody in general. But there are some indicators that this game script could break a little bit, and some of these players could give you the fantasy production you need, which is likely. But odds are saying that when we look at this matchup, there's going to be a few duds, and there's going to be a couple players here that go nuclear. And they're going to be the players you're going to wish you put in your lineup, but you're going to have to take that gamble somewhere because that's how it's going to roll with this matchup. But Merry Christmas to you guys. Happy Christmas Eve. Happy Christmas. Thank you guys for watching this whole year. I love you guys. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on the way out so you do not miss the content this off season. I'm going to have more content next week to help you in your championship matchup. Plus, learning the advanced metrics on these players is just going to help you out going forward. But I want to thank you again. It's been a great year, and I'll catch you on the next video.